And then, poof, suddenly 30 minutes are gone, maybe 60.
Just vanished.
And the aftermath is so consistent, isn't it? That slightly anxious, slightly empty feeling.
Mm-hmm. You know, that time didn't genuinely serve you, didn't really help you move forward.
Yet somehow you were just glued to the screen.
Yeah, stuck.
It brings us right to the central question explored in the source material we're diving into today. When that happens, are you truly in control of your attention?
Or have you, in fact, already lost it? Maybe without even realizing.
Our mission in this deep dive is to explore the insights from this source on that common social media anxiety.
And look at two surprisingly practical practices the author used to reclaim a sense of agency.
Yeah, and stick with us because there's a pivotal aha moment the author experienced.
Oh, right. Rooted in a very old idea about what we actually have power over in our lives.
Exactly. It really reframes the whole challenge.
It does.
So let's start where the author does, by laying out the problem. This feeling of wrestling with an illusion of control.
It feels incredibly relatable. The author describes, starting, like many of us, I think,
Yeah.
with the belief they could approach social media rationally. I'll just check it briefly, they thought. I'm in control.
We've all told ourselves that one.
But time and time again, that belief just crumbled.
Those intended quick checks turned into extended, often mindless, scrolling sessions on, Instagram or Facebook.
Right. Lost time.
And the cost wasn't just the lost time, was it? The source highlights that persistent negative emotional outcome.
Yeah, feeling anxious and drained after scrolling, even while knowing the content was pretty, well, meaningless. Junk food for the brain, kind of.
That cycle, the intention for a quick check, the spiraling scroll, the feeling of emptiness, that's what forced the author to confront the difficult question.
Am I really in control of my attention?
Or have I already lost it and just been lying to myself?
Oof. That seems like a moment of stark honesty, a real turning point.
And it's here that the author had that key breakthrough, connecting their struggle to a classic piece of wisdom.
Yes, they remembered a core Stoic reminder that cut right through the self-deception.
Which was?
What we can truly control is our will and actions, not external results.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. Why is remembering that ancient idea so powerful when you're wrestling with, a phone app?
Well, because social media platforms, right, by their very design, they're built around external results, likes, shares, notifications, comments, all that stuff.
Right, things you can't really control.
Exactly.
Right.
So if your focus is constantly on those things, your emotional state becomes entirely dependent on factors outside your control. This Stoic idea forces you to pivot. Forget the algorithm, forget the validation counts, focus purely on your own actions. That's where your power, your sovereignty lies.
Okay, so applying that to the social media challenge, what does that look like?
It means acknowledging you can't control the algorithm or that sudden random urge to check your phone that just pops into your head.
You can't stop the urge itself.
No. But, as the source emphasizes, you can design a structure for how you encounter those situations.
Well, okay, design a structure.
Yeah. Instead of being caught off guard, going into battle naked, as the author puts it, which is a great image.
Yeah.
You can be prepared. You can have a plan.
That shift from focusing on uncontrollable outcomes to controllable actions seems fundamental, really key.
Absolutely.
So based on this realization, what were the practical steps the author took to build that protective structure? What was the first practice they actually implemented?
Okay, so the first practical step was establishing external boundaries. Simple as that.
External boundaries, like...
They put a hard, non-negotiable time limit on their daily social media use.
the screen time limit function.
Pretty much. And the source specifically mentions setting a limit of 30 minutes per day.
30 minutes, okay. And what's fascinating is the author's honesty about the motivation behind this limit. It wasn't some grand declaration of self-discipline, was it?
Not at all. The author candidly states it wasn't born of self-discipline, but rather deep distrust in myself.
Wow. Okay.
They knew their internal willpower often failed against the lure of the app, so they essentially outsourced the saying no to a rule enforced by the phone itself.
That's a really practical acknowledgement of human weakness, isn't it? Just accepting you might need help.
Totally.
And was it immediately easy once the limit was set? Or was there still, resistance?
Oh, the source is clear that it wasn't a magic fix.
Yeah.
There was absolutely the initial strong temptation to just add one more minute when the limit popped up.
Right, of course there was. We've all seen that button.
But the author found that even fighting that temptation, The limit became more than just a restriction.
How so?
It acted as a constant, tangible reminder. You are not infinitely free. That little countdown or notification forced a moment of awareness, prompting a conscious choice in the moment, rather than just drifting into mindless scrolling again.
So it interrupts the automatic pilot.
Exactly. And this struggle and the awareness it fostered connects directly back to another Stoic concept the author mentions, doesn't it?
Temperance, right.
Yes, it relates to temperance. The Stoic view isn't necessarily about suppressing desire entirely, but about cultivating the wisdom to know when to say enough.
Knowing your limit.
Right. This time limit acts as a practical training tool for that temperance. It teaches you to recognize that point and practice stopping, even when the desire is still present.
So the time limit isn't the end goal of never using social media again.
Not necessarily.
But a way to practice saying enough for today, preventing the app from controlling your entire day or your attention.
Exactly. It reframes the limit from something punitive, like a punishment, to an act of choosing sovereignty over your time and attention, choosing control.
Okay, so that's the first practice. Setting an external, non-negotiable time boundary. That tackles the challenge of stopping once you're on the app. But what about the internal struggle, that constant urge to check the phone throughout the day when you're not on it, that little itch?
Ah, yes, the itch.
Yeah.
The author found a different, almost accidental approach for that.
Accidental. Okay, intrigued.
Yes, the second method they discovered was quite counterintuitive. They started using the phone's stopwatch function.
The stopwatch. To time how long you're on social media?
No, see, that's the brilliant twist. They used it to track how long they could go without opening a social media app.
Ah, flipping the script entirely. So instead of measuring failure like time spent scrolling,
Right.
you're measuring success, time not spent scrolling, time reclaimed.
Precisely. And the author describes this unexpected reward mechanism. Seeing that stopwatch number increase felt genuinely more satisfying than any, count they'd ever received.
Wow. That's a profound shift in motivation, isn't it?
Huge.
Moving from chasing external, unpredictable validation, likes, comments,
Yeah, the stuff you can't control.
to building internal, measurable achievement. Something you did.
It really is. This practice wasn't about suppressing the desire to check the app by sheer willpower alone. It was about turning the act of exerting control into a visible, trackable achievement.
So you're not just trying not to check, you're actively building a score, like a streak of successful non-checking, gamifying it.
Exactly right. The author termed this a reverse addiction.
Reverse addiction, I like that.
Instead of being addicted to the app, you become motivated by building time away from it. It created motivation to look forward to beating yesterday's time.
The competitive element, even just with yourself.
Yeah. Fostering a feeling of moving forward towards self-control instead of just running away from a bad habit, which can feel negative.
That positive framing seems really important. And this focus on building that score day after day, that connects to another key Stoic idea.
Yes, it powerfully illustrates the concept of consistency.
Consistency. How so?
Well, the source explains how living as the person you aspire to be, someone focused, disciplined, in control of their attention, isn't about one grand act, but consistent small actions, day in, day out.
The little choices adding up.
Exactly. The stopwatch helps visualize the alignment of your actions, not checking the phone, your values, focus, self-discipline, and your resulting positive emotions, satisfaction, stability.
So it makes the abstract concept of consistency really concrete and visible.
It shows that consistency isn't just a concept. It's built moment by moment, choice by choice, and you can see it growing.
Okay, so we have these two distinct but complementary practices. There's the external time limit acting as a hard stop and a training tool for temperance.
Boundary.
And then the stopwatch, gamifying the time without scrolling, building consistency and positive momentum.
The reverse addiction.
Did the author find these two working together created a larger, more significant shift?
Yes, absolutely. The source highlights that these two practices combined enabled the shift from reactive anxiety,
the negative feelings that came after uncontrolled use.
right, from that to proactive regulation.
Proactive regulation.
Achieved by intentionally designing their approach beforehand, planning how they'd engage or not engage.
So it's about being deliberate and prepared, rather than just reacting to urges or external triggers like notifications hitting you out of the blue.
Precisely. And the core message here is clear.
Yeah.
The goal isn't necessarily complete abstinence from social media. It's not about quitting cold turkey for everyone.
Okay.
It's about establishing a clear boundary so you can consciously choose how and when to use it, preventing it from using you,
Yeah.
taking back the reins.
And the author saw real changes in their daily behavior as a result of this.
They did. Big time. The source mentions they now check social media much less frequently, often just once per day at a specific chosen time.
Ah, scheduled checking.
Yeah. This eliminated the previous pattern of constantly opening the app and feeling that pressure to reply immediately to every little thing.
Which loops back beautifully to that Stoic perspective on emotional control we touched on earlier.
Absolutely. By regulating when and how much they engaged, the author found it easier to detach their emotional state from the external, uncontrollable factors of social media.
Like how many likes a post gets, or how quickly someone replies, or if they reply at all.
All that stuff that can cause anxiety but is totally out of your hands.
Because you've put the control back where the Stoics said it belongs, on your own actions.
Exactly. What you can control, based on the source, is when you pick up your phone and for how long you engage with these apps. That's your domain.
Now, the source is very grounded and realistic, acknowledging this isn't presented as like a perfect cure-all.
That's a crucial point, I think. It makes it more believable, more human. The author is clear this isn't a perfect solution, and they don't succeed every day.
Right, there are still moments of slipping up, which is normal.
Totally normal.
But even with imperfection, what was the significant outcome the author gained? What was the payoff?
A genuinely valuable sense of control in a chaotic world, even if it's not perfect 100% of the time.
Just feeling more in charge.
Yeah. That feeling of agency over this one, often overwhelming area of life made a huge difference overall.
And that imperfect, sustained effort, that good enough approach, led to the author's deeper realization, didn't it? The source of the anxiety wasn't just the platform itself.
Correct. That was the ultimate insight. The anxiety wasn't fundamentally caused by social media itself, but by the underlying disappointment of feeling powerless over myself.
Wow. So the scrolling was a symptom, maybe even a way of avoiding that deeper feeling, not the root cause itself.
That's how the author framed it. The struggle was less with the app and more with their own feeling of lacking self-mastery, lacking that internal control.
That really reframes it. That's powerful.
And implementing these two simple, albeit imperfect practices started a positive feedback loop. Seeing their behavior actually change
Even in small ways.
helped rebuild my trust in myself. Each small success, each time they hit their time limit or beat their stopwatch score, chipped away at that feeling of powerlessness and restored confidence.
Building momentum.
Yeah. And it was that process that led to the simple, powerful mantra the author adopted.
Which was?
Good enough is better than perfect.
Ah, yes. Giving up the exhausting all-or-nothing thinking that often paralyzes us.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught in that trap.
Chasing a complete detox is one extreme, which feels unsustainable for many.
And getting lost in endless scrolling is the other. Both feel out of control, ultimately.
Right. Two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Instead, they found a pace I can handle and, more importantly, sustain.
Sustainability. That's key.
It wasn't about dramatic perfection, but consistent, manageable effort over the long haul.
So the source's final reflection is that while the anxiety related to social media hasn't completely vanished, it's probably still there sometimes.
It no longer controls me. That feeling of being driven by external validation or internal powerlessness has been replaced by a conscious choice and a sense of self-sovereignty.
That's the goal, really. Not zero anxiety, but agency.
Precisely.
Okay, so to quickly recap this deep dive then, we started by acknowledging that common feeling, that universal experience almost, of time vanishing on social media.
Leading to that anxious, empty state.
And the profound question of whether you're truly in control.
Yeah, that core question.
We then explored the author's journey from recognizing that feeling of powerlessness to implementing two distinct but complementary practices.
Setting hard time limits as an external boundary to train temperance.
Right. The saying enough.
And using a stopwatch to gamify time without scrolling, building consistency and that reverse addiction.
And we saw how these led to a shift from reactive anxiety triggered by losing control
to proactive regulation achieved through designing a structure, a plan.
Ultimately, creating a clear boundary. So social media is used by you, not the other way around. You use the tool. The tool doesn't use you.
That's the aim.
And ultimately, the deeper realization was that the anxiety stemmed maybe less from the app itself and more from that feeling of powerlessness over oneself.
And the process of regaining control, even imperfectly, Helps rebuild self-trust and find a sustainable pace, a good enough pace.
It wasn't about achieving perfect abstinence, but about creating intentional structure and finding a way to live more in alignment with their values.
Well put.
And that brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. The source suggests the core anxiety wasn't just the external platform, but the feeling of powerlessness over oneself. Thinking about your own life, maybe beyond just social media, where else might you feel a sense of powerlessness? Where do you feel like you're not quite in the driver's seat?
Could be anything, really. Work habits, health habits, how you spend your free time.
Exactly. And how could designing a simple structure in that area, perhaps inspired by these two practices we talked about, setting a clear limit or intentionally tracking time without a specific behavior, how could that help you begin to regain a sense of control?
A sense of self-sovereignty, as the source might put it, in that part of your life.
Just something to mull over.